Hello and welcome to Whisky Sisters podcast. I am Inka Larissa.
And I am Jennifer Rose.
Together we will bring you a monthly whiskey podcast where we will be discovering drams, exploring distilleries, and talking to industry experts and catching up with our whiskey pals.
We will be sharing exciting whiskey adventures, sticking our noses into some whiskey news, keeping our drams on fire, of course, and cutting through any industry bullshit. So, buckle up and enjoy the ride.
You're listening to the Whisky Sisters podcast with Inka Larissa and Jennifer Rose.
Ooh, hello, welcome. It's Halloween month, our very favourite. And oh boy, do we have some whiskies to match the theme, listeners.
We do indeed. Today we are sampling 4 whiskies from Lady of the Glen independent bottler. Lady of the Glen pays tribute to the ghost of Stirling Castle, so it's appropriate for Halloween. Although this gets even better as they have just brought out their Samhain series, which is a hauntingly beautiful limited edition whiskey collection that dives deep into the Scotland's eerie folklore.
So cool. And forever I've thought that's been pronounced Samhain. So there we go. Samhain. We're learning every day here with Whisky Sisters.
Oh, you know, I knew that because I was watching a TV series from Netflix called Botkin, where it's like a true crime podcaster is trying to find out what happened during this Samhain festival, Halloween.
I've not
festival.
seen that on Netflix yet.
Yeah, it was okay. It was kind of funny. It's it's
nice,
strange.
I've got a really, really embarrassing addiction at the moment on Netflix. I'm watching Love is Blind, this cheesy dating show from every country, obsessively, because I love romance. So ridiculous. I've just watched Argentina. Okay. Back to the important stuff, the good old whiskies. Each of these whiskies is paired with a myth or legend from the region of its distillery, which I love so much. Shortly, we welcome Gregor Hanna, the owner of Lady of the Glen, as well as our band ambassador, Paul McKendrick, who will tell us more about each of the bottlings.
Yeah, I'm excited because I want to hear all the stories behind all the names. But this might just be a difficult one, just putting you on the spot. But if you would match a whiskey with some folklore or ghostly story, what would that be, if you can think anything on the spot?
Okay, you tell me yours and I will have a wee think, because growing up on the Isle of Mull, there was folklore all around me.
Oh, okay. Have a think. I have 2 different stories. These are from Finland. Very weird, let's just say. So
I would expect nothing less from funky Finland. I'm braced and ready.
Okay, so one is Ilmatar and the birth of the world. So for this one, I would pair something coastal and vegetal, like something from Campbelltown, or maybe the mermaid one from Glen Scotia.
Oh yeah.
Or from a distillery that uses worm tufts for that kind of oily sulfur-like spirit, like Craigellachie or something. But you won't find out why. So Ilmatar is the female spirit of air, floated in the cosmic sea for 700 years until a bird laid an egg on her knee. From that egg, the world was born. Basically, she shapes the world from this kind of cosmic omelette. It's yolk was the sun, and the egg white is the moon, and then the shell pieces were stars and the land. And her son, Väinämöinen, emerged from prematurely and fell into the sea, and his body was formed the first fish, birds, and plants.
Whoa! Like Finland knows how to cook a tail. That's bloody amazing.
So you can see that kind of sulfur, eggy vibe.
Amazing.
But also, it was a female who created the the world. But if you want something darker, because it's Halloween after all, so there's one about Tuonela, the Finnish underworld, or Finnish version of the
Oh.
underworld. And the whiskey could be something heavily peated and punchy. I'm thinking like Glasgow 1770 peated. Or, that one really black one that we used for when we were taking pictures with Bob, we had in the glass, we
Oh
had that like
God,
really
yeah. It
black one.
almost looked like Coca-Cola black.
Yeah, something like that. So Tuonela is the realm of the dead, ruled by Tuoni, the god of death, and his daughter Louhi. To reach the shadowy realm, souls must cross the dark river, guarded by a black swan that sings death spells. And the realm, there is no moral judgment, just eternal sleep. And Tuoni's wife, Tuonetar, is a terrifying hostess who offers a beer of oblivion made from frogs, snakes, and poison. Drink it and you forget your life. And sometimes shamans and heroes try to visit Tuonela to seek wisdom or love. Most barely escape. One of the characters, known as Lemminkäinen, is famously killed and dismembered, only to be resurrected by his mother.
Love it.
Yeah, the mother goes on a search and, helps him out.
That's determination of a mother for you.
Yeah. And the dark realm, there's like deadly creatures also. And there's a beast that guards the gates of the underworld, and it is known as Surma, which means like death, basically. A flesh-tearing monster. And its role is to prevent the living from entering the realm of the dead and ensuring that the dead can't escape. And then also it kind of embodies the finality and the terror of death itself.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like death is really scary.
Yeah. Yeah, not messing about.
The beast is often described as it has wolf's jaws, a serpentine body, and paralyzing gaze. In some tales, the monster's mere presence is enough to kill. So even if it's like in the same room.
So cool. So see in Finland, is there like books depicting this and maybe like cartoons or yeah?
There's a whole big book. It's called Kalevala. And there's loads of many tales, but there's obviously other things as well about bears and loads of witch stories and stuff. But the Kalevala is like the main book.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, what amazing costume inspiration for Halloween, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's kind of all that stuff we learned when we were kids at
Oh,
school.
yeah, just to put the Finnish fear of death into you. I love your pronunciation of all the Finnish names as well. Totally beautiful.
Yeah.
Growing up in Mull, there was lots of wee folk tales. None is quite as bad boss bitch style as these Finnish ones, but I did live near a cave called McKinnon's Cave. And that's like, I think in the Hebrides, it's one of like the deepest caves coming off the Atlantic. So it was called McKinnon's Cave, and legend has it that a piper and soldiers went in with their dog, and the little people, basically fairies, they were pretty savage fairies. Nobody survived. They only let the piper live if he would play a good tune. But he played a tune and then collapsed at the mouth of the cave dead. And the dog's the only one that survived, but came out bald as anything.
Oh no.
I know, poor wee dog. So we need to pair that like with a wee life check or something from Tobermory Distillery. But I thought, quite evil fairies then.
Yeah. That's the thing. A lot of the Finnish ones are like witches and fairies, but they're not actually that nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no Tinkerbell vibes in
No.
the Mull folklore or Finnish, it seems.
Yeah.
Cool. I feel we should be sitting at a bonfire, like toasting marshmallows and having drams with these stories.
I know. Well, I'm dressed in all sorts of spider gear. I got spider ring. I got spider ears. I got dark purple lipstick. I'm like in the dark mood for all these stories tonight.
Love it. I just have my signature red on, but I do have my Ozzy Osbourne inspired bat eating. So if there's chinking noises against the microphone, sorry, I'm going for a look over, and we're not even recording this in video actually, so
I
that's
know.
incredibly
But we've
selfish.
got guests coming, so that's what I was like my
Yes.
thinking. Like also the Metallica top with the skulls on that you're wearing.
Thank you. I think we should record some video soon so
Yeah.
people can see our tasting chops and expressions, don't you think, Inka?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And maybe the odd wink when we're being whiskey bitchy so people aren't scared of our chat.
Yeah, exactly. All the little nuances.
Yes.
Okay, but let's stick our noses into the latest whiskey news before we continue with the stories.
Stick your nose in it.
So, Sam Heughan, who we've been trying to get on the podcast many years ago, who
Yeah,
ghosted us.
yes, he absolutely Halloween ghosted us, the absolute bugger that he
I
is.
know, although he did follow me.
I know. I wonder
Yeah.
what about that.
Mm.
Maybe he changed his mind.
And I
Maybe
was resisting not following back, but then I gave up.
yeah, we would still have him on in a heartbeat. We're just a
Yeah.
wee bit, bitter.
Yeah, just a little bit. So he obviously best known for his role in Outlander, and he's the co-founder of Sassenach Spirits. Has now acquired Crafty Distillery, which I actually am a big fan of, in southern Scotland, and rebranding it as Galloway Distillery. So previously home to the Hills and Harbour range, so Hills and Harbour gin and 24/7 vodka, the Crafty name has now been retired. However, the Hills and Harbour spirits will continue to be made on site, which I'm glad to hear that they are still making them because they are one of my favorite gins. Now they are under Galloway Distillery banner, joining Heughan's flagship Sassenach portfolio. And looking ahead, the distillery will also produce the Galloway Scotch whisky with an annual production capacity of 200,000 litres of pure alcohol. And at present, it's operating at a limited run of 15,000 litres for a special batch of single malt new make. And the site also boasts an in-house bottling facility capable of handling up to 175,000 bottles per year. So fast hands.
It sounds like Sam is putting his money where his mouth is. It's not just been like, I'm not saying I thought Sassenach was a flash in the pan or, kind of
I
flavour
did
of the
think a little
month.
bit.
But like I didn't know, and that would sort of seem that he's very keen and interested in a kind of genuine way with longevity in the whiskey world, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like maybe he was just milking the popularity of Outlander with the whiskey a little bit.
Yeah.
I haven't tried it, so I don't even know like what it tastes like. But yeah, it's really nice to see that he is actually really keen and likes his whiskey.
Yes. And we would still have you on, Sam. So don't be rude.
Give us a call.
Next time we send you a video, reply. As of the 1st of January 2026, Bryony McNiven steps into history as Ardbeg's first female distillery manager in nearly 2 centuries. And she's born and raised on Islay. McNiven, she is the daughter of a long-time Ardbeg stillman and has dedicated her entire professional life to the distillery. Oh, so wholesome. So her appointment echoes the legacy of Margaret and Flora McDougall, sisters of Ardbeg's founder, John McDougall, who were among Scotland's earliest female distillers back in 1853. Maybe some of the listeners listened way back to our episode of Women in Whiskey, which is worth a listen, I would say, Inka. Although it was one of our earliest episodes, still one of my favourites. So she's armed with a chemistry degree from the University of Glasgow and has worn many hats at Ardbeg as a brand ambassador in Sweden, 6 years in the whisky creation team in Edinburgh alongside the Dr. Bill Lumsden, drumroll swoon, and master blender Gillian MacDonald, and since 2018, planner for the distillery's visitor centre. Earlier this year, she also took on the role of co-chair of the Ardbeg committee. So go you, Bryony McNiven.
Great news indeed. So here's the latest on the Uncle Nearest saga that we covered a few episodes ago. This is as of October 2025. So for those not up to date, Uncle Nearest, the Tennessee whiskey brand, is under court-appointed receivership after allegedly defaulting on over $100 million in loans. The receiver, Philip J. Young Jr., was appointed in August and has taken over management. The Weavers have stepped back from day-to-day operations. Uncle Nearest had acquired a vineyard in Cognac, France in 2023 with plans to launch a cognac brand. And the receiver now recommends selling these cognac assets, citing that the brand's inability to invest in the additional $15 to $25 million that they needed to launch a product is basically not happening. And the receiver has made significant budget cuts, including 13% workforce reduction. But despite the turmoil, he believes that company has significant value and could be reorganized quickly. A 13-week budget shows the business can cover most expenses, with Farm Credit agreeing to fund a $2.5 million shortfall. So in the end, looks like they might just survive, at least for now, and the brand continues.
Sending survival vibes to Uncle Nearest.
Gregor Hanna and Paul McKendrick.
A massive warm welcome to Paul from Lady of The Glen to our podcast, and we hope to be joined by Gregor at some point soon. So he's having some technical issues, so fingers crossed we can speak to him soon, but welcome, Paul.
Hi guys, thanks very much for having me on. It's a classic example of a long-time listener, first-time caller. So yeah, this is a great opportunity to meet you guys and get the story across and tell a little bit about some exciting whiskies too.
Yeah, well, how did you get into whiskey actually?
Mainly as a drinker, and whiskey in general for me was something that came about because when going to the pub with your friends and things like that, they would always be drinking beer. I couldn't stomach any more than a couple of pints, so eventually moved on to something a bit shorter, let's call it that, and developed a taste quite early on, I suppose. From our generation, being 20 and asking for a single malt at a bar, it's certainly quite unusual. But it wasn't really until I was in my early 20s that I'd sort of developed a passion for it. I suppose that little bit of patriot in me wanted to explore a bit more of my country, and just a familiar story of hearing the history, learning a little bit more from the distillers and themselves just totally caught the bug. Simple as that. Yeah, just decided that I wanted to have a career in whiskey as well, feeling that I could I got enough passion and enthusiasm to share, and none of my friends and family really cared about whiskey, so I had no outlet. So I thought, okay, these people that I'm meeting at whiskey festivals and tastings, they get the cut of my jib. They're my kind of crowd. So I thought that would be a good opportunity. So yeah, and that's sort of what started my love for whiskey. And of course, that moment that we all have where you have that one whiskey that completely changes you from just a drinker into an enthusiast and wanting to find out more. I've got too many of those to mention, but it does go back to the classic, first time you tried something peaty, which was Lagavulin 16, and I was like, what on earth?
Oh, nice.
Need to know more about this. Why does that taste so different from Glenfiddich? So that was the start of my journey of learning a lot more about whiskey, finding out more, and just really igniting that passion as much as it is today.
I really like your description of how, it wasn't necessarily around you in terms of friends and family, but drawn to it from an early age and then forged your own path, found your own people. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish I had that story of, and Gregor can have his side on the story, that you pass down the knowledge and the passion from your dad or someone in the family, that you can really take that on. And I suppose I've got my kids to bore them with, which I do on a daily basis, with stories of my whiskey, and I can just see them smiling and nodding just to keep me happy. But, one day they will.
So do we have Gregor? Can we hear you? We can see
I can
you.
hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Welcome, Gregor.
Oh yeah, how you doing?
Good.
Well.
We're glad to have you. So we were just doing a little intro on your whiskey background and how did you get into whiskey?
All right, so my background's quite different from Paul's. My dad was a piper in the Black Watch, so he used to have really great whiskey collection from piping at weddings and events and things like that. It's the usual thing a piper does after they've left the army, and I was really inspired by that. But I mean, I couldn't really get a job in the whiskey industry. I wasn't very good at chemical engineering, and I wasn't very good at the sort of sales side of it. So I just parked it for years. And it was when I was at university in Stirling that I met a guy, or I was working behind a bar, and this gentleman offshore told me about independent bottling. So that sparked an interest then. And it was probably about best part of 8 years after I graduated that I actually got the confidence to be able to start a business. So that involved buying 2 casks and then creating the brand and starting from there, really.
That's a really bold move, big step.
Well, I was quite miserable in my job. I had been working in the bank, and then I ended up just wasn't enjoying it at all. And so I got a loan from the bank to buy a car to help my commute. So that was about £8,000, and I used that to buy 2 casks. So with that, I was able to get the capital to start the business and everything. But I was really managing it and doing it part-time for years. So even after I'd left the bank, I was still working for like a coach travel company in East Kilbride and just trying to manage the business then. And thankfully, the guy, David Urquhart, he was really accommodating to what I wanted to do. And so I was able to be quite flexible and juggle the two roles. And eventually, I left David Urquhart Travel and did the business full time. And down the line as well, a few years later, Paul and I had already been in conversations at festivals and things. We'd known each other, and then we met in the Pot Still in Glasgow, and we decided that we'd work together. And we've been working together since and set up the Bonded Warehouse, and now it's got Gavin and Alex working in the bottling hall. So it's good. It's a nice team. It's not changed for the best part of 5 years now. So it's coming up with the longest job that I've ever had in one place. So that's still no promotion. So
yeah. Where can you go when you're already at the top, eh?
So what we would like to know about your approach. So when you're introducing Lady of the Glen to someone who's perhaps not yet heard of you, maybe in a market that is somewhat crowded, how do you kind of differentiate yourself from other indie bottlers or describe or present Lady of the Glen?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, that's, I suppose, you put myself in front of people, and whether it's a whiskey festival or a tasting. First of all, explaining what an independent bottler is, but yeah, point of difference. And I think that's just something that we'll touch upon rather than in one question. I think hopefully you'll hear that as we go through, because it's all the little decisions. It's not one thing that we can say we do this differently than said other independent bottler. But I suppose the main things that separate us, Gregor touched on it there. We are a small team, so every part of the process we're all involved with that, which is really nice. Hands-on as well, having our own warehouse. I suppose that's the one unique aspect compared to other independent bottlers. Not to say that there's other small independent bottlers that don't have their own warehouse. I think even when we opened the warehouse in 2020, certainly one of the first of our size to be doing all bottling and warehousing ourselves, but it certainly offers us a huge point of difference in terms of what we can do with the liquid. And of course, that is just focusing on the liquid. In terms of the brand, you just need to spend an hour at a whiskey festival and see all the different vibes and feels from different independent bottlers, essentially doing the same thing, not necessarily taking the credit or the blame for distilling the whiskey, but depends how you look at it. But certainly the period after that, when you take ownership of your casks, that's your decision from then on. All the little things you make decisions about that whiskey that ultimately determine what differentiates you from, a different independent bottler, whether it's re-racked, whether it's bottled straight away, whether it's left 10 more years. These decisions are made in-house, and that decision with the same cask might be made differently with another independent bottler. Yeah.
The whole cask aspect is so fascinating. It's like, how do you choose when to bottle? Like, do you go with your own taste, or do you just go with what you think will sell or what people like? Because not everyone likes everything, obviously. Or do you just always just go with what you think is good?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I'll just quickly add, Gregor can contribute as well. But certainly from my point of view, first of all, we've got to like the stuff, and stand behind it. I've got this fear. As I said, the last 2 weekends there, I was traveling Belgium and Denmark, so doing half a dozen tastings in front of a few dozen people at a time. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a presenter. I'm not a Jim McEwen or a Richard Patterson. So if it's something I don't fully agree with in terms of what liquid in the bottle, then I've got nowhere to hide. So I always picture myself, tasting a sample in the warehouse and then having to present that whiskey and kind of get fully behind it. But of course, there is that little marketing side there as well, that we do think we do have to sell these bottles at the end of the day. So is it perhaps just about the four guys in the office and our tastes, or do we have a kind of wider view of how good that spirit is and how well it would be received?
Just want to add, in terms of the story, the actual name Lady of the Glen, it comes from when I was at uni in Stirling. So I wanted to name the business after something I really cared about. So I named it after the Green Lady ghost at Stirling Castle, because I had really fond memories of my first time moving away from home and living independently. I'm still in touch with a lot of my friends from uni. That I didn't want the business to fail, so that was part of the reason why calling it after something like that. But I couldn't call it Green Lady because it had connotations with new whiskey. So I just went for Lady of the Glen.
I like it.
So nice, yeah.
And it's kind of Halloween-y.
Yeah, totally. My gran used to tell me a ghost story. She worked at Camsaskin Hospital many years ago in Helensburgh, and she would tell me a story about the Grey Lady, and it made me think of that story, when I came across the name Lady of the Glen, and it had nice memories for me. So it's interesting to hear the background of that.
We're a contemporary business as well. So when I was setting up the business, we didn't have the names A.D. Rattray, Gordon and MacPhailin or anything. So it's very much a contemporary brand, the floral pattern on the bottle and the glass. It's all meant to be contemporary and really showing off the sort of Scottish floral pattern. And originally, when the packaging was done, we worked with a Glasgow fabric design company called Bespoke Atelier. So they do curtains and things like that. So originally the bottles were in these sort of purple pouches, but the problem with that is when they were on shelves, they would fall over. We couldn't do that anymore. So they ended up changing the packaging, but the floral pattern stayed the same. And we've really just, over the years, just leaned more into that sort of Scottish natural element. And I was always inspired by Adelphi's bottles, where you're sort of seeing the spirit and the colour of the spirit, which is really important. And so with our bottles, that we're putting an emphasis on, you can see the natural colour, and hopefully that's wetting people's lips in terms of what flavour they're going to get. And on our labels as well, we try and present the story of the cask. So we'll like to put in what the original distillate tastes like. And then maybe if we have finished it, or if it's been matured fully in a hogshead, what the impact of that's been. So you're really getting the story of the cask, which is important for us as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's basically kind of half answered my next question, because you got many stockists abroad, including US, which I wanted to point out because we got loads of listeners in the US. So yeah, what role does Scottish heritage play in your international storytelling? So obviously that's you're kind of linking already with the name and the patterns. Is there anything else that kind of come to mind, or things that you want to mention?
Well, when we are exporting to the US, we need to get all the labels approved. So one of the issues that we did come upon is when we've described certain distillates as a light distillate or a medium bodied, the FDA have come back to us and said, oh, you can't have that because you're implying it's a light beer or something like that. Oh. So we've had to actually change some of the descriptions on. And also when we've described casks giving an orchard fruit flavour, we've had to remove that because then it's an implication of using additives. So there's a lot of things that we need to be aware of when we're shipping to the US. So sometimes the US labels will actually be slightly different than what's in the rest of the world, despite the spirit being the same.
Yeah. What was that description we had on the one for Quarter 2 that, it was just such an innocent way of describing the flavours of a whiskey. And I think anyone who's read a tasting note or the back of any bottle, these words just fell off. But when you broke it down and looked at it, there was that suggestion that there was, green apples added at some point during the production. And it's easy for us to criticise and say, well, obviously not, it's whiskey, but they've just got to cover all the bases and make sure that there's no suggestions of anything other than just exactly what whiskey's all about. So it can be tough, but it's a good market to be in. The potential's there, just all the bureaucracy and red tape that goes with it that navigate, especially being a small independent bottler. You know, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I use Balvenie as an example. You know, they're 12-year-old. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in concept for a long, long time. Quality's there. You know, we're an independent bottler bottling 40 casks per year for Lady of the Glen. So every single one of them is a unique, you know, is a unique presentation, a unique SKU that has to be dealt with individually. So fun, but worth it potentially.
Can you tell us what drew you to the theme, this amazing Samhain theme, if I'm pronouncing it sort of correctly? Was there a particular legend or a moment that sparked the idea?
Well, I was at the Fife Whisky Festival and Stephen Shand was there. And Stephen Shand used to work for Weems, but he had a room in the festival which had all of his artwork in it.
Oh.
And when I was in, he had this amazing drawing of Tam O'Shanter.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, well, I'm a huge Burns fan. So at the time, I was like, I'd really like to do something with his pen and ink artwork and stories and do like some whiskey releases. So we had a conversation and Stephen was really keen, and we thought what we could do is we'll do a series of octaves, which are maybe 40 or 50 bottles. So we can pick like a distillery and pick a ghost story around that distillery, and we'll do 6 different labels. And we kind of wanted to give it a more sort of Celtic and Scots feel. And Stephen had the idea of using this Samhain, which spelt like Samhain. I mean, last year, Paul and I were having multiple conversations about how the hell you even pronounce it. But we finally settled on Samhain, which is like a Scottish equivalent of Halloween, and it's but it's like a month long. So it's even better because now you can sell stuff for a whole month. One day we trialed it with 6 octaves last year, and it went really well. And so this year we felt like we'll do it with an entire full-size casks. So it was a big gamble in many ways because we're totally changing the packaging, and we only do 4 outrun's a year. So if this bombs, then we're going to be sitting on a lot of stock. But I think we were quietly confident that based on Stephen's incredible storytelling and his artwork, that it would do well. And thankfully it has. It's sold out from our perspective, although the shops and the retailers still need to sell it. So we'll just say that it is available at selected retailers.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, you basically more than tripled your outturn, I think, compared to last year, didn't you?
Yeah, that was the gamble, yeah. To go from octave to full hoggies, and then totally different stories because it's totally different distilleries as well. So
why don't we crack open the first one of the 4 samples that we have today? Thank you for sending this over.
Thank you.
So this one is Preladi Distillery from Islay, 15 years old, first fill, bourbon barrel, limited to 245 bottles and bottled at 52% ABV. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, this story. So maybe you guys can do that.
Isn't it funny
tell us more about the story?
We all know how Bruichladdich as a word to pronounce is much more difficult, but yeah, I'm going to give it a go as well. But the Tarbuski versus the Ishkuski.
Nice.
But basically the concept is the water bull versus the kelpie, you know, the water horse. And just to rein in, I mean, I'm not going to do what I did in Denmark and read it very bad Scottish from word to word at the weekend there. I'm just going to skim through it. But basically the concept is, and you know, the water bull, the connection to Islay of the idea of during the night, you know, the water bull coming out of the sea and mating with the cattle already grazing there. And the farmers would know that the offspring from that particular coming together, let's call it that, would be slightly, let's just say, insane and a little bit, different from their normal cattle, and they would know. But I suppose that the idea is it was quite a friendly story and myth compared to some of the other stories some of them that we dismissed, but even some of the ones that passed. This is one of the nicer ones, and I suppose the kind of brighter label gives it a little bit of a kind of light-hearted feel to it as well, nice and bright. And I think it's quite a nice little story. And I suppose the thing that Stephen did so well with the entire series last year and this year was connect a really cool story, really interesting, you know, myth and legend, but connected to the place where the whiskey was produced. And I think, you know, I'm very visual with my, my description of whiskey, and it might just be me, and, you know, you guys can correct me or not, but I certainly think that the story, in terms of the theme of the story, goes along with the flavour profile of that whiskey as well. So, light-hearted, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek comparing, water with kelpie, but nice and light and malty, nice and fresh and creamy at the same time. So,
my God. Yeah. I'm loving this. Like, this nose is so good.
The nose is so good.
Yeah, if I can just throw in some notes and you can give me where you're getting, but there's definitely like pineapple, floral, honey. I was thinking tinned fruit salads, especially the grapes that are in there. Lots of vanilla. I was getting some brown bread, buttered popcorn, and almond croissants, which I love.
Very nice. It is super juicy and inviting in the nose. I also get a heather honey, nicely perfumed.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously the concept of what we do as an independent bottler is our take on that maturation when we have the cask, as I mentioned earlier on. But it's something that I'm passionate about. I know Gregor catches on as well, that we're certainly about the balance of the whiskey and striking that balance between the distillery character and the cask that it's been matured in. So it would be easy for us to re-rack everything into really heavy sherry or port casks, make it really dark, make it really rich, and easier to sell, obviously, colour on the shelf. But at the same time, you would lose a lot of the dynamic of that distillery. So for me, the perfect independent bottling is one that, although we're not taking credit for the distillation, we want to recognise it. I want to find the Bruichladdich in that bottle of whiskey that carries the name Bruichladdich. And I think it's definitely there. You've got that creamy maltiness that I always get from modern style Bruichladdich. But yeah, I love the fruit you were getting, Inka, the tin peaches and things like that and pineapple that I get. That's all first fill bourbon, fully matured, 15 years in first fill bourbon, bringing all those sweet fruit notes across as well.
Yeah, it's so nice. I was talking on the previous episode how I'm kind of gone back to the basics, like really gone more like drinking bourbon casks rather than loads of wine and like fancy all sorts of different finishes. It's so nice to taste the distillery's DNA and those kind of, I don't know, it's just, I feel like, like that circle, that time for me in my whiskey journey that I just want a little bit more of the distillery character.
Yeah, 100%. I like that. I think we all go on our little journeys, and I don't know if we all have the same. Where I mentioned my inspiration. One of my inspiration was the first time I tried a peaty whiskey, and that just sent me on a journey for about 18 months of only wanting to drink peaty whiskies. Then you go through your sherry phase when you learn about the different types of sherry cask, and then I think whether it's maturity or whether it's palate refined, I don't know, but you do tend to come back to appreciating a lighter cask influence, and I think distillery character can be a lot to be said for that. So
on the palate on this one, I'm getting Madagascar vanilla, apple juice, ripe pear, cinnamon, wet oak, salty coastal vibes, and more pastry. And the finish, I was getting like toffee and ginger and oak and stuff. It's just really, really delicious.
It is very delicious. I agree totally. I've got apples and pears on the palate, and I find it slightly biscuity and a very lingering sort of finish. It's so sippable.
Yeah, it's a good start for sure.
Yeah, 52% ABV. It's bang on 52. That's natural cask strength. There's everything in Lady of the Glen's all natural cask strength. I think that's a great strength to be drinking. Most whiskies at. But just a wee interesting nugget for me. Most of the Bruichladdich casks that we've worked with, whether it be our own or third party that we've bottled for, they're all huge in ABV. And I think we're filling the casks at either high 60s or low 70s ABV rather than the usual 63.5. So normally, even after 10, 15 years, they're pretty high. This one being 52 natural strength just tells me that the cask was working so hard with this one. Really,
not being shy with the strength, a bit like the bull in that story.
Maybe this one is more for you, Paul, but either one of you can answer. Just because when you're meeting people face to face, so how do you guide someone from I just want a good whiskey to I want to experience this story that's in the glass, basically? And because I feel like there's a lot of stories in this branding, especially. Yeah. And your story anyway, like as a independent bottler.
I suppose first of all, it's the liquid at the end of the day. If you're hooked by the liquid, then you want to find out more. I mean, you say the story. Do you mean the story of how that cask came about being bottled, or the story that's actually on this label? Because of course they're both important. But
Obviously, there's different stories between the series as well, but for more about the independent bottler itself, then more you know and you have that connection with the brand, then more you hook your drinkers or people will come back, no?
Yeah, I think
So
so.
it's just
I hope
having
so.
that, like, how do you bring the people over from just giving them sample and they're like, oh yeah, that's nice, to then maybe return to the brand.
Well, that is the dream. At the end of the day, we're talking about Bruichladdich and what makes it unique and why this tastes the way it does, but we're not selling Bruichladdich as such. They can do an absolutely fine job of that all by themselves. So the dream is, someone tastes your whiskey, falls in love with it, buys a bottle, drinks it, wants to buy another one. Oh, no, sold out. Oh, because it was only a single cask and there was only 200 bottles. But, that whiskey was bottled by Paul and Gregor, Lady of the Glen. So surely this Glenlossie 21-year-old is also going to be good, even though it's a completely different style of spirit. So it's an interesting question, actually, not one that we can give a straight
Yeah,
answer to.
sorry.
And I
Yeah.
suppose maybe it boils down as well because this whiskey's, it's probably about £150 on the shelf. So it's a very considered purchase. And you think about our target audience, they are, I mean, the dream is, we get some beginners and convert them onto whiskey, but convert them onto independent bottlers, convert them our way as well. But, it is a considered purchase by usually someone who's already quite knowledgeable. They know what they like, they know what they don't like. And at the end of the day, they're not going to be completely loyal to one brand completely. So there's always that opportunity to tell our story, which I think has got enough about it that makes our brands in general interesting, makes our decisions interesting, and the final product has a story beyond what you can see on the label. And yeah, I suppose the story with this one is that, Bruichladdich distillery these days, quite hard to get. It's quite a rare distillate these days to see offered out in the circles that we would acquire casks from.
And I think that's some of the like mystique of independent bottlers, that it's like you're tapping in and you're connecting with something that's been like especially selected and comes with a story and building trust in your independent bottler, kind of like luring them in. So I think it's very exciting, the link between the stories and the connection with land, just like you were saying earlier. To me, that would draw me to an independent bottler because it feels very deliberate and thought about, quite exciting, and want me to find out more about, what were they doing next, as opposed to, oh, that one whiskey was lovely. It's a shame I can't get that, so I'll not bother going back, that you buy into the whole package.
Yeah, I think so something I'm always keen to get across as well is that we are in a good position. As much as we would like to grow, sell more whiskey, sell more casks, buy more casks, we don't have the pressure of a distillery to put out a certain product and it must sell. We have a very good portfolio. I've inherited that working now 5 years with Gregor, when I couldn't believe what I had to work with when I came on board. So credit to all the work Gregor was doing in the years before I joined. And when we go into that warehouse, as we were doing today, looking at the next release already, you're almost spoiled for choice. And I suppose that's leading me on to the point that you were asking earlier on about what makes us different. And I suppose it's that freedom and to choose casks, but also to leave some behind. There's no pressure to bottle. There's no numbers to meet. Good whiskey has to go into the bottle, and at the end of the day, we could be judged on that. Somebody's first impression of our whiskies are something that they didn't enjoy. Then we're all human at the end of the day, and I suppose we're up against that with the distilleries as well. Because if this was your first ever time you've tried Bruichladdich distillery and you don't like it, then you form an opinion of that distillery as well. But I will caveat that with saying that I think 9 times out of 10, if not a lot more than that, every independent bottler, whoever they are, will do a distillery a credit, a service, rather than anything negative. So
yeah,
important
definitely.
as well. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's good, especially now when the market is so crowded. It's good to kind of pace yourself and leave the customer wanting more rather than getting overwhelmed by the choice.
Picking a choice. Let's move on to the Ghost of Dumbarton.
Yeah.
I'm sipping away on it. So the Ghost of Dumbarton Castle, Strathclyde Distillery, single grain Scotch whisky at 31 years old, refill Oloroso hogshead, and limited to 145 bottles at a very juicy 54.6% ABV. And single grain, something we've spoke about a few times in the podcast, sometimes might get overlooked. So can you tell us a bit about what drew you to this single grain, and maybe if there's anything you think people are missing about it as a category?
In terms of independent bottling, I think most independent bottlers now release a single grain in their outruns or whenever they do batch releases, because you're getting sort of old distillate or older distillate, and usually there's a good price for it as well. I think it's really popular amongst independent bottlers, whether it's Strathclyde, North British, Cambus. There's loads of these really high quality grains which have just been originally set aside probably for blends, whereas now a lot of indies have acquired them and they're being able to sell them into the market. One of the guys in the warehouse, Gavin, he's a huge grain fan. If ever he thinks that something's one of the grains that we do is good, then it definitely will be. It's just you need to be canny with the pricing with grain, because as people see more of it, I think they're expecting grain prices from maybe 4 years ago, but unfortunately because of the popularity of grains, I would say the prices have started creeping up a bit.
But then I guess you get higher age statements as well, which maybe help to justify it a little bit more.
So usually it really complements an outrun if you've got a grain in it, because the rest of your releases will maybe be about 10, 15 years old, and then you can have a grain that just balloons it to like 30, and then everyone thinks, oh, you must have an incredibly diverse and deep portfolio. There was actually a funny story behind the label for this one, because as you probably know, like Strathclyde, we could have had loads of stories about Glasgow and ghost stories. And last year we did the Gorbals Vampire for the Glasgow distillery. And this year, Stephen came to us and he's like, I'm actually really struggling to get a story for this, because they're either too gruesome or there's some sort of sexual perversion or some sort of really nasty murder. And then you're like, yeah, we can't really do that for a label.
Sounds like Glasgow.
You're trying to get something that's not kid friendly, but no one wants to get a bottle which has got corpses and random stuff on it. So we resolved to go with the Ghosts of Dumbarton Rock, and Dumbarton's obviously got a distillery. But this is in the Strathclyde Empire. Yeah, that's what we went for, and was this ancient fortress.
I quite like this one, to be honest, especially being fairly local to me. But I think, well, I mean, there's one or two castles in Scotland, as you know, but the big ones, the Stirling, the Edinburgh Castle, get all the attention. But I think most tourists have probably never heard of Dumbarton Rock. But it's pretty spectacular where it is, right on the Clyde, and the role that it must have served over the years. The Romans, the Vikings, even the English were all trying to come up the Clyde at some point, and that was there protecting basically the whole of the way into central Scotland from that part. I love the link to the distillery as well, because it's not in the same region anymore. Strathclyde as a region doesn't exist, but the Strathclyde distillery is right on the River Clyde. And so therefore you're connected by this hugely important body of water. And I think, to be honest, it's probably my favourite label of Stephen's this time, even though it's quite dark. But you can sort of pick it up, and all the kind of wee ghouls and ghosts he's got going up the stairs at the back all sort of have a tie into the history. There's the guy with the claymore there at the front. There's a wee Viking at the back there as well, ghosts that are roaming, of all the people that have came and failed and died and left their ghosts behind. Great. I just love that story as well. This is one where we do have a one-up on the distilleries who don't have any interest in having a brand or creating a platform for their single grains. A couple of reasons for that. The whole concept, the whole term single grain is really confusing. And I love it being Scottish and being really lazy with our terminology, because single malt is quite apt in terms of describing one distillery and 100% malted barley. But I love the idea that 100 years ago, when they were deciding what to name this other spirit that's made with other grains, they didn't think that anyone would ever be drinking the stuff as a single, let alone an independent bottler on a great podcast having to explain, what the hell you've got in your glass right here. It's just grain whiskey. What kind of grain? I don't know. Do we care? Possibly, but we don't have that information, so we just have to go with what we have in the glass. And the story with this one is great example of what makes, again, just I did say before, all the little things will come up as we go along, would make us unique as an independent bottler, having the bottling hall for full control. But for me, the kid in the candy shop, when we took out the keys to our own warehouse and being able to go in there and play around with the casks I mentioned before, when we take ownership of those casks, whether that's today, whether that was a year ago, whether that was 10 years ago, that's the point where we're in charge and we have the full control and can then really invest our time, energy and efforts into making that whiskey as good as it can be. And this one's a great example where when the cask first came in about 18 months ago, I remember it because Gregor and I went into the warehouse quite excited because we do like our single grains. And we tried a sip of this. As a 30-year-old whiskey, you've just got to pinch yourself sometimes what you have in your glass. And making a decision as to whether a whiskey's ready for bottling or in general what we have to do with it, the first question that we ask ourselves is, do we like this? And I love that because it's just such a simple question that anyone can answer, whether it's someone with 10 years experience, 60 years experience, or, somebody that had their first whiskey yesterday. Do you like this? Yes or no? And both Gregor and I did quite like it. But the next question is the difficult one. And that is, well, would we bottle it? Would we stand behind it? And if the answer is yes to that, well, then it's quite simple. But if in this case, the answer was no, we have to then figure out what can we do? Is there anything we can do, to save this or to change its direction? And so, from memory, it was just a nice grain whiskey that had nothing special about it. 30 years, fully matured to that point, in just a refill bourbon cask. But it had nothing that really jumped out of the glass that made it unique, made it special. And we had an empty refill Oloroso cask sitting in the warehouse from a Speyside whiskey that we'd just bottled. And it was quite a quiet sherry cask. And what I mean by that is the influence on the previous whiskey, even after 3 years, was quite soft, quite gentle. So I was quite confident putting a grain whiskey into that cask, because grain whiskey is very, it's like a big sponge for whatever cask it goes into. Hence the reason why most of the time it's filled at birth into very tire refill casks. So I was quite confident putting into this Oloroso cask, and a year later, it just gave it a nice raisiny toffee sweetness that gave life to the whiskey that was maybe just a bit tired in the refill cask, but it just gave it that kick up the backside to fulfill its potential that I was looking for. And yeah, perfect. 1 year, no longer than that, because otherwise it would start to take over. And hopefully you get a little bit of that sweetness coming through.
Oh my God, definitely.
So much sweetness.
So lovely. So like on the nose, I was getting red apples and the dried fruits, cognac-like elegance, I wrote. I don't know, I don't know if you get my meaning. Some more dried apples. There's some farm building kind of like aroma, but like in a nice way. Yeah, something like that. And a bit of coconut and the kind of sponge cake with some vanilla icing.
I found it very sweet on the nose, really nice, but honeycomb more like, crunchy chocolate bar. I'm not as classy as Inka with the nose, but that's what I got.
No, it's nice. And like on the palate, raisins, gooey caramel. Do you know toffee fair? The
Yes.
Yeah, that's like toffee and caramel and nuts, I think.
Yes.
Or chocolate in there as well. It's like got a little bit of everything. It's that. And some sweet apricot and more apple, Finnish, more dark chocolate, nutmeg and that kind of nuttiness. It's really nice. That was really good choice with the cask.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed this.
I get pecan pie on the palate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of my favorite single grain whiskies that I've ever
tried. It's my favorite single grain whiskey I've ever tried. I was thinking that earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, top compliments there. Yeah.
No, really.
The trick for this one was to make sure the cask didn't dominate. And again, having the warehouse there, if there is a whiskey that I am a bit worried about, whereby the balance could be lost, then we can try it. We don't have to wait 14 weeks for samples to be delivered to wait, that time and then make a decision, because 14 weeks is a long time, especially for a whiskey like this. So having it basically under our nose to be able to try it every single week, if necessary, and that might be the reason why there was only 145 bottles out of this Oloroso hogshead, because it was sampled fairly frequently just to make sure.
Just taste it again.
Yeah, just to be sure, just to capture, as I say, the sweet spot, as I call it, and that is that where you've got that balance between, and talk about distillery character. That's why it's so tricky with grain whiskies, because there is no character. Well, okay, I know if there was someone like a head distiller at a grain distillery would be jumping in right now to say, hang on, my whiskey has character. But compared to single malt, the 8 or 9 grain distilleries we have now, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember the number, but to an untrained palate, they will all very much taste the same as new make spirit. It is very light, it's well stripped, there's not much character, so you're relying on that oak to give it the character and the flavours that it that it needs to be, to something that stands out in your glass.
No, we're definitely fans.
What do you call it when the mixture of grains used for making whiskey comes to life and starts terrorizing the town? Why, a monster mash, of course.
So, shall we go on to the next one? The Wizard of Gordonstown outruns the devil. Milton Duff Distillery, Speyside Single Malt, 11 years old, ex-peated Isla wine barrique, limited to 239 bottles, 56.8% ABV. So what made you go for the ex-Isla cask instead of choosing already peated spirit?
Again, the serious business of creating a good whiskey like the Strathclyde from something that had huge potential. The other benefit of having the warehouse is that we can be as bold and as creative and as venturous as we want to be, within reason. We do have a number of different casks of Milton Duff, the distillery. Some of them, we are maturing away in some wonderful port and Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks, but there's also that creative license to have a bit of fun and do something a bit different, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The idea of taking a fairly medium-bodied Speyside whiskey and putting it into a cask that once held Isla whiskey, the idea is you're going to add a little smokiness to that. Just, I don't know, just make, as I say, it's a bit of fun. And playing with the flavours within the boundaries that we can in terms of the rules. So that's really how this came about. But to be honest, it's nothing new. The idea of taking an unpeated whiskey and putting it into an ex-peated cask to add that element of flavour, that depth of flavour that you do anyway when you take a whiskey from one cask into the next. You're adding layers, complexity on top of what's already there. Creating a balance, that's the tough part. But yeah, what's going to happen when you put a Speyside whiskey into an Isla cask? Well, you tell me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I find sometimes some distilleries, when they use Isla casks, maybe the spirit ends up tasting like that Isla distillery a lot. And I've sometimes used the reference to, like, it's like a fake designer handbag. It's kind of like it feels like it's the same, like looks the same, but then in this case, I think this is really nice. The balance is there, and definitely the Speyside character, but also you get that peatiness, but it's not in your face in any way. So yeah, like I find the nose really fun. I don't know, like my initial is like, oh, what is that? Like, what am I getting? The pink mushroom, like pink and white mushroom sweets, like the kind of soft, like a Haribo type of ones. I was getting marshmallows, red and white licorice. At the carnivals, they have those little long ones that has like a vanilla white thing filling and then the red thing on the top. Then I was getting some dry locks and like oakiness also on the nose, but it was really nice.
I think it's really different on the nose. For me, I was getting like, this maybe sounds gross, but it's not meant to sound gross. Like somebody's fresh breath, like with nice toothpastey breath, like with a devilish smile, which ties in with the name, and slightly leathery. I was a bit enchanted and very intrigued by the nose. I found it quite different.
That's pretty out there. The wine. So originally we actually released a Kalila. So that's what the peated whiskey was, and it was our Kalila and a second fill Riv Salts cask. So this is obvious. So we didn't want to put Kalila on the label, but it's potentially it's a Riv Salts cask that it's in. So Riv Salts is a southern French fortified wine. So you'd expect to get like sort of caramel notes and orchard fruits like orange and things like that. So thing is, you pay a lot of money for these casks, so you want to get a good use out of them, and you want to add layers, as Paul was saying, of flavour and complexity to spirit. And yeah, you also don't want to throw away good casks.
Yeah, this is where me coming from the west meets Gregor from the east and realising people from the east are so tight, but at the same time, he's right, especially when we all want a cup of tea, but we've all got to use the tea bag 4 times in the office. Gregor gets to go first, of course. Reusing the casks, we do work very well with the casks, and I think that the element here that you mentioned, I think at length Gregor and I had a conversation about whether to even mention the fact that it's a wine barrique on there. But for me, the flavours are there, so it's wonderful. You've got that smokiness. The tasting notes you guys gave just confirms that. The feedback we're getting right now, I get that an immense fruitiness from the Speyside, but there is this sweeter side as well. And even though the Kalila was in there, I think, Gregor, can you remember, was it at least 3 years anyway? So quite a bit of time.
Really, yeah.
Just to pull out all those flavours. And if I remember right, the Kalila was pretty intense. Riff Salts is a bit like a port cask, so it's got that same sort of intensity of plums and raisins and sort of dark fruit notes. So I love the fact that we still got some of them coming through, even though the cask was quite well used. That with that little flinty smokiness, which, do you know what? Having only released these whiskies, but spent a bit of time in market the last couple of weeks and tonight as well, I'm obviously getting feedback from you guys. This is the first feedback we've heard from out with our own pallets within the warehouse, so it's great to get that feedback. And it was a kind of mixed response as to whether there was any smoke in there. I don't know how obvious it is. To me, sometimes it's there. But if you do that, if you do that whole kind of put a bit in your hand, rub your hands together till it dries in, and then smell your hands, you totally get the smoke right there. Yeah.
I think it definitely comes more on the finish, and like on the nose, it was maybe those logs in there. But yeah, on the palate, it was dryish. It was lively, sweet, salty, like honey, vanilla pudding, or vanilla custard, more marshmallows. I was getting strawberry ice cream, and I wasn't even thinking about the peat till towards the end. That's when it starts to appear more and comes maybe a slightly more ashy. I don't know.
Yes, tobacco-y on towards the end, I would say.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that it is kind of similar to port, because it makes me think of some whiskies that have been matured in port cask. They have that kind of nice, that sweet. I like that sweet side with a little bit of peat. It just works really well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just to go back to what you said earlier on about the the knockoff handbag. Love that. But I see it differently. I know where that would come from, and I know why some people might look at that and go, "Oh, they're just trying to cash in on the whole, premium of Islay, whatever it may be." But I see it totally different. So when you have a peated whiskey like Kalila, we'll just use that because that was the previous contents of this cask. It's the very starting point of the production of that whiskey. The barley, of course, is integrated with that peat smoke, and that carries right through all of the process. So the final spirit, the final whiskey that's in the bottle and in your glass, that smoke to me is totally wrapped right around and within that spirit. But I like to think if you add a finish of an ex-peated cask to a non-peated whiskey, it's almost just like a layer on top. You're not changing the dynamic of that whiskey. It's still fundamentally a Speyside whiskey. Tasting this cask in the warehouse, that was the priority for me with this experiment, was to not change that concept of a Speyside whiskey, but with this addition of complexity and kind of dynamic that a peated cask can bring. And to me, it is just like a layer of smoke on the top rather than being wrapped right through the whiskey. And that comes back to those flavours that you were talking about, which do tie back into that Speyside character. And again, I do apologise to everyone I do a tasting with. I keep repeating myself with terms of balance. We know fine well we've got a Speyside whiskey. We have to be very careful not to lose that balance because, light, floral, fruity, delicate that most Speyside whiskies are. But coming in with something like a Milton Duff, which is slightly more full, rich and heavier in terms of backbone and body than, say, Glenlossie or a Balvenie or Glenfiddich for those lighter style Speyside whiskies, gives us that little bit more to work with, that little bit more backbone in that spirit that can stand up to a bit more of whatever the cask is going to do to it. And I think that's the case here. It's certainly the Speyside character is standing up strong to that, to the intensity of the new cask that it spent just over a year. I think it was in 14 months, I think, around that, in the peated cask.
Can you tell us a bit about the Wizard? I'm thinking of Wizard smells smokiness, but it's maybe nothing to do with that. Is there anything about the story and why it's been paired with this whiskey?
Well, because it's it's set around that sort of part of Speyside, this story. So the Wizard of Gordonston, Sir Robert Gordon, made a pact with the devil, who bestowed on him unearthly powers. And once the time came for the devil to collect the wizard's soul, Sir Robert mounted his horse to escape the Holy Pact's consequences. But then I think his horse didn't quite reach where he wanted it to go, and I think he broke his neck on the way into the kirk, but so the devil wasn't able to claim his prize. That was Stephen selected the story. But what was fascinating and great about the artwork is it's actually taken from underneath the hedge. So Stephen was actually pretty open that he took inspiration from like horse racing. So you're seeing like the hooves of the devil's horse coming over the top of you, and you're seeing
that's cool.
Sir Robert sort of being chased by wolves. That's probably the most dynamic label of the bunch, and probably really in the sense of what the series is about. It's sort of your classic ghost story, because the other thing about the Samhain series is we tried to get stories like that's why all the whiskies are all from different parts of Scotland, so you can have different stories from each region rather than, I mean, we could have just released like 6 Speyside or 6 Highland, but that's why you've got Isla, Island, Lowland, but they're also from different time frames. So this is probably 15th century. We've got more contemporary ones, which we'll come on to do with UFOs. And there's ones from not just wizards and witches, which is what this one is, but we tried to get other stories. So it's like a really varied celebration of Samhain and everything sort of with that sort of theme.
So cool.
Yeah,
I love all these
cool.
stories. Like I'm very into all the...
We're here for
Yeah, we're here for Halloween month for sure.
Yeah.
Do you see the Samhain series as a seasonal ritual now because you've done it twice, or is it more of a creative playground and maybe you will phase it out and do something else next?
Well, I've spoken to Stephen about doing it next year. We don't want to become sort of stuck in the mold. So we've got ideas about doing it next year, but it would be good to keep being creative about it and not just trying to find more and more stories, because there were a lot of stories on the cutting room floor. Like there was one really interesting story set in Speyside, which was about a guy that got kidnapped. Well, I think he got really drunk and kidnapped by fairies and then woke up in Paris. And we were like, oh, this will be great. This will be a great story. And then Alex was like, yeah, but you can't portray a drunk person on the label. And we're like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's modern times. We've got to be careful with all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's obviously a rich amount of stories, but then you don't want to just do witches all the time, because that was the other thing is like a lot of the witchcraft stories are to do with a time when women were getting persecuted. So you want to celebrate that. And
yeah.
I mean, we do have a witch story in this one, but then you're trying to, I mean, Stephen was quite clear that when he did the witches one, that he also mentions, oh, by the way, like this was a really controversial time. And
for sure.
Yeah, so they're not necessarily witches. It was just sort of a label. So yeah,
in a way, they're all stories, whether they were true or not. But like, it's kind of funny that these days we have to always just be so cautious about, it's a story. Like, come on, people, just cut some slack.
I agree. But like at the same time, you don't want like really gruesome stories, because like who's going to want like a severed hand or something, or a severed head.
Oh my God. I tell you, there's loads of whiskey fans who love that. I don't know if you not follow Whiskey Morg on Instagram. He basically pairs whiskeys with different horror movies.
He's our good whiskey fan.
There's also a market for that.
Yeah, for sure. The last of the 4 today is Playground of the Giants from Ardbeg Distillery, but I am not very confident in pronouncing the name. The Kerrang how do you say that?
Stephen said it's like Kerrang, like it's in the Kerrang magazine,
Kerrang.
and I'm like, I know that.
Yeah,
I'll go for that.
Yeah. We can do that. The Kerrang Playground of Giants. Love it.
There you go.
A Highland single malt Scotch, 7 years old. First fill bourbon barrel, limited to 215 bottles at a whopping 60.4% ABV. We want to know the story behind this banner.
For Stephen's artwork, this is actually one of the more controversial labels, because when we saw the initial draft, it looked like the giant had a giant. He was really
owner.
Yeah. So we had to have a conversation, and then Stephen's like, "But actually the rock formation has been identified as possibly being a giant's
One of those when you see it,
habitat.
No
you
way.
can't
Yeah.
unsee it.
Ah,
You know what I
so
mean?
a giant boaby.
Yeah,
Boaby.
yeah. It's not just his Bobby though. He's really, happy. So
Oh,
I feel
okay. The
bad.
giant's happy boaby.
But that's not what's in this. It's his knee, or I think it's his foot in the picture. So just bear that in mind.
Okay.
Just quick, are you gonna sell these artworks? Like, can you buy the labels as an artwork?
I think Stephen was going to do something like that. We were quite happy for him to do it.
I think it
think
would be
he's
really
got
cool,
some
like
original
as the
print. Yeah.
posters, even just like with Lady of the Glen at the bottom or something, as a poster. I collect loads of whiskey posters, so I'm just curious.
Inka just wants one of the
Stephen's a great
giants.
artist. So
Yeah, I just want giants, Boaby, in my wall.
it's simple. So people would just. I mean, they're doing a suplex as well in the same picture, so the giants are proper having a go at it. So
Before this conversation takes wrong turn even more, why don't we talk about Ardbeg? It's such a amazing, great new distillery. I've just been there this summer and I'm like a massive fan. And I have to say, I draw 2 hearts on here on my tasting notes. So it's probably my favorite of all these from today.
Yeah, it's pretty special stuff for more than a few reasons. I mean, yeah, liquid wise, it is just on a different planet. To be honest, it's just such a great distillery. I'm so jealous you've got to visit it. It's certainly on my list. Lists are something that's a big part of my whiskey journey, in terms of visiting the distilleries. But even Gregor and I have our combined lists of distilleries that we've bottled from, and unfortunately the ones that haven't been ticked off yet, there's quite a few of those distilleries, and so when we get a cask from a distillery like this where we haven't had one before, then we get to tick another box. But even more special when it's such a special liquid as well. So yeah, Ardbeg distilled, founded 2017. This liquid's from 2018, so one of the first few casks that were filled. 7 years old, fully matured, first fill bourbon. I believe the spirit is distilled at the barley's specifications around 80 parts per million, so way up there, way high. But they're, unlike a few other distilleries, they're quite open when they're talking about the fact that, yeah, the barley is super peaty, but they only take that higher cut so as to leave a lot of those heavier phenols and compounds behind. So therefore the spirit doesn't take as much of that smoky depth and earthiness across, which I think is really honest and really refreshing, because we want that information. We want to know why Octomore from Bruichladdich is palatable, even though 167 parts per million on the barley should be something that you shouldn't be able to drink, but it is. It's palatable because of the way that they take that barley and craft the spirit. So I like the fact that Ardbeg are quite honest and open with that, but it gives them that unique flavour profile. But yeah, just a really classy liquid at such a young age, but using everything that they have going for them to make that work.
Great. And actually, we mentioned earlier in this podcast that basically Ardbeg will hopefully be our next episode, and we will really focus on those little nuances of peated and how it works and how they do in it. So there will be more information on that.
Well, good. I hope I got it right then.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I remember all that. Yeah, you did well.
Yeah, good stuff.
But yeah, so I think this one has a really lovely nose. There's that sweet peat, but like very gentle, not like over the, like doesn't blow your head off. Slightly coppery or something, but like not in a bad way. Bonfire smokiness in your hair, after you've been near a fire. So the smokiness remains subtle. Some green vegetable note as well on the nose, burnt lemon, and fruity sweetness, maybe peach or something.
Definitely fruitiness. I've got more a charred pineapple and maybe like an earthy soil on welly boots. Gentle sweetness, super yum on the nose. And
Yeah.
I'm not a peat freak, but I'm becoming more lured to the peat side, but it's certainly not intimidating.
Yeah, no, that's what I think with Ardbeg. It's just such a, like it comes in a nice way, and with that sweetness, it always really work. And on the palate is sweet vanilla, roasted, or like a smoked hazelnuts. I think like during autumn, especially in
Oh,
Florence and
nice.
Italy, they do those. They're really smoking them in town. Licorice, some gammon, some stone fruits, coffee beans coated with dark chocolate, which is quite common here as well. Sometimes you get with your coffee. And yeah, on the finish, some ashiness and still fruitiness and orange.
Your voice sounded distorted in my
I
earphones
know.
here,
There's
like you
definitely
thought you'd
like
been possessed by,
I heard that as well.
potentially
I was
some
wondering if it
giant.
was. No, I was hoping it was just me who heard that, but maybe there's some like spirit.
Yeah,
Possessed by a
that's
giant. Yeah.
it.
I know. Be calling me.
Yeah.
Exactly. My goodness, what four utterly delicious drams, all very different but really, really tasty. Congratulations.
Yeah. What are the other? I think did you say there were 6 bottles in the series? So what are the other 2 that we are missing today?
So we had a 21-year-old Glenlossie, which is actually, it was my personal favourite from the 6, that older Speyside, just fully matured in a refill hogshead. And what was the other one? A Deanston. Now this was the one for the sherry fans. It was a first fill ex Pedro Jimenez quarter cask finish. There's a mouthful. But 11-year-old Deanston with a PX finish, quite intense in terms of the colour, but again, balance. And something that I've been talking about a lot recently is the revival in my mind of Deanston as a distillate. It's always been good, but it's never had the love that it deserves, I think, owned by the same folk who have Bunnahabhain and quite understandably spent a lot of their investment in that, but it seems to be turning around now. They've really, for me, captured what makes Deanston unique. And we've not seen many casks of Deanston on the independent bottler market for quite a few years now, so
Yeah.
quite nice to get a few of those. We have a couple more in the warehouse, so that one was a good one to get out there. And, just certainly enjoy having that point of difference within our releases as well as the liquid.
That one was actually my favourite label as well, because I'm quite a big X-Files fan. So I really wanted to do like a UFO themed label.
Yeah.
So we managed to, despite where Deanston is, we thought, well, it's close enough to the Falkirk Triangle. So the Falkirk Triangle is where there's Fife, Stirling and Bonnybridge. So there's lots of a UFO hotspot. So we managed to get like a classic UFO sucking up loads of stuff from the river just beside Deanston, the distillery. So I thought it was an amazing artwork. And we were speaking to Stephen about, what things should it be sucking out? Should it get like a shopping trolley, or like just casks, or like what's going to come out, or like maybe a cow?
It's Count Dramcula, come to suck your malt.
So yeah, that was quite a fun label, that one, like your classic 40s or 50s Roswell type spinning. Yeah, like the green label, yeah. Yeah, Stephen's artwork is brilliant. Yeah, I love the colours, and each one's telling its own story. Like Paul's exceptional at telling the story of the drams and the spirit. But the great thing about the series is you're able to almost tell 2 stories on one release.
Even from day one, when you come into the warehouse, right, Stephen, here's the casks that we've picked. Take some samples away with you, and then we wait patiently for and can't wait to see what he comes up with. And he comes up with these stories. It's just absolutely fantastic. Then you see them brought to life by the artwork as well. So no, it's a fun thing. Whether we do it again or not, we'll see. At the moment, we're quite happy. We're quite content. But we might get the itch back again this time next year and want to do this again, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes. These are pretty much sold out. Well, they are sold out from our warehouse. Really well received. Just to touch on the point earlier on about the fact that we were a little bit nervous but quietly confident based on the series that we released last year, although they were just octaves, 50, 60 bottles. They were sold out. Feedback was great. But yeah, it was a big, bold move to go into full casks. But the fact it was pretty much sold out within a couple of hours of me sending out the emails to introduce the new release to our markets, it was almost gone bottle for bottle. So that answers any questions that we had about the thirst, pun intended, for these whiskies that into the market. So yeah, if you are thinking about getting 1 or 2 of these bottles, don't hesitate, because they will disappear, I suspect, just as fast out in the market as they did from our warehouse as well.
Amazing. And for those that have listened to this podcast before, we have a habit of asking our guests if they wouldn't mind sharing their dream dram. That is somebody dead or alive, famous, that they would like to share a whiskey with. Who would it be, and what whiskey would you share? Maybe one of these series, maybe something else.
Gregor can go first because mine's is really boring.
Well, I actually was talking about this with my wife this morning. I was like, oh, I could go for Trey Parker or Matt Stone, maybe Courtney Love or Steve Coogan from the 90s. It'd have to be the 90s. And then she's like, well, what about me? And I was like, yeah, okay, then yeah. So I'm going to pick Maria, my wife, because we've got 2 boys now, so we don't really get a chance to drink a lot of drams a lot. So I think we'd do that. And I think, to be honest, there was some of the best time we've ever had, excluding with the kids, because that's obviously a joy in itself, was when we went to Isla for the feast. So I think we'd go to the Ardbeg day and have like one of the Ardbegs there.
That's so nice. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Romantic, Gregor.
Yeah. Well, I take that back. I thought he was going to come up with something really exciting, but no offense, Maria. No offense, Maria. I love you. No, I was caught in 2 worlds, to be honest, and I still am right now. It's the same as when I'm at a restaurant and I cannot pick what I want to order, but when the waiter comes over and asks me, that's the point where I have to decide. And up until now, I'm doing it as well. So I was thinking, and this is where it was going to be boring, was one of my favourite people is actually Dave Broom, the writer, the whiskey writer.
Oh, yeah.
I just think he's
great.
Yeah, I love his writing, and he captured everything I love about whiskey in the book A Sense of Place. I don't know if you've got that one or read that one.
Yeah, got one. Yeah, got
behind
one.
me here. So I was caught between Dave, because I think he's just such a humble guy for such a whiskey celebrity. But you know what? Since we're on theme and with your T-shirt, Jen, and my little Metallica people behind me there, I'm going to say James Hetfield. That guy there. Just because that's combining my 2 worlds.
Oh my God. Are you going to come and see Metallica in Glasgow in June?
Possibly.
June again.
Possibly. Do you know what?
We got tickets.
I know. I'm a bit of a gig snob right now. Like, I don't know if I'm just a phase that I'm going through, but there's so many bands that play little pubs and clubs that, you pay 20, 30 quid for, rather than, I don't know, was it 150 quid at the cheapest ticket for Metallica? I don't know. It's a band that's always in my top.
Paul, get yourself there. Come on, see Papa Hate with the Whisky Sisters.
Yeah.
Sold. Let's do it. I'll sneak in a hip flask as well. What should I put in the hip flask?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we always do that. Got to be done.
Put it in the shoe.
Okay.
In the boot.
got to be Lagavulin. I think there's just something really special about a peated whiskey sipping from a hip flask that you've passed around 20 people and everybody's had their toenails washed back into the hip flask. It just adds something really special to the moment. So it's got to be a Lagavulin and a hip flask at a Metallica concert.
Yeah. Or blackened Metallica.
Their whiskey, which I'm sure is delicious, but I haven't tried it yet. But yeah.
Before we finish, let's do a quick round. Your favourite of these 4, if you have to put one on the hot seat.
Glenmorangie for me. Sorry, I didn't give you that one, but yeah, that was probably my favourite.
But from these 4, though.
Oh, the ones that you've got.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Torreveg, just because it's so exciting, because it's our first cask from Torreveg, but also one of the first independent bottlers to get a cask and bottle a Torreveg. So that's quite exciting as well, and even more so that the liquid is just outstanding. Just really special liquid.
Yeah, I'd go for the Torreveg as well. To be honest, when it was coming into the warehouse, I told Paul about it, and I was like, I don't know if we can release this, Paul. It's too young, because we've got a policy about not releasing really young casks. And for me, I would say 7, 8-year-old is too young. But then Paul was over the moon when I revealed that we were going to bring it in. So really glad that it worked out.
Definitely worked out, yeah. Jen?
I think it's a really tough decision for me, maybe the Bruichladdich, but I have to say they were all super tasty. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. And it's nice because I feel like it's been a while since we had an episode where there's been like all of them been exciting and good and delicious and fun. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us in the podcast.
Yeah.
We hugely appreciate your time, your expertise, sharing drams and getting to know you both a bit more. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and Paul, if you are at the Glasgow Festival, come and say hi.
I certainly will. I'll be there.
Yeah,
I will definitely be trying more Lady of the Glen in the future, because this was a very good experience.
Good stuff.
Definitely.
No problem, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank-
It's great to meet you. And
Thank you both
see you
so
soon.
much.
Whiskey Sisters.
Next month, we will chat with Stuart from Ardbeg Distillery and dive deeper into the peat side and getting all nitty-gritty details. So if you are a peat freak or just peat curious, this is definitely an episode for you.
And we will also be heading to Glasgow for the Whisky Festival for our third festival in a row. And we will be doing a juicy ass bonus episode to tell you all about it. But please come and say hi if you're going. And we are launching some merchandise, including some Whisky Sisters Glencairn glasses. So please keep your eye out for announcements because this is very drumroll worthy, high octane exciting, and you must get your dollars and pennies at the ready because surely that is going to be a Santa essential in your sack. Meanwhile, follow us on Instagram. I'll try and do a wee bit more on Instagram, but I can't be bothered. It's very time consuming, but I will try because I would like you to follow us on at Whisky Sisters Podcast, X at Whisky Sisters, and Facebook at Whisky Sisters Podcast.
Great. Have a ghostly month.
Yes, I will, Whisky Sister Inka. I'm just going to glide off like a ghostly apparition. And I'll see you next time, sugar.
Yeah, I feel like we need those smoke machines.
Yeah.
And then just disappear from the camera.
Apparition.
Happy Halloween, whiskey pals.